Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this 11th episode of CAD Class. We're back to the core team, myself, Tom and Dick. Dave sends his apologies. Again, he's very, very busy this week with the broadcast business. So some hellos and introductions. I'm Dominic Main. I do production CAD, and I also do lighting as well on the side, or one other way around, one or the other. But next, welcome, Tom.
Hello, good afternoon. My name's Tom. I do technical design drawings for the live events and theatre industry, and look forward to this week's class.
And hello, my name's Dick Crabb, and I'm a sound engineer.
Brilliant. I think we're going to kick off. Just give on we're going to talk about plotting and publishing this week, which we said we would do at the end of last week. And Tom's going to kick it off, and Tom's going to show us in AutoCAD. I'll then talk about it in Vectorworks for a bit. And then I think we're going to talk about UCS and world UCSs and things like that. So over to you, Tom.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think we had a really enjoyable class last week, and we talked about a number of things. But one of the things I think we agreed on was how do you actually print what you have drawn? So what we're going to do our best is to print. So the word print, I don't think is necessarily used very much in AutoCAD, but the word plot or publish is used. Essentially, they're the same thing, but I believe the word plot is used because often you might use a plotter, as in a bigger printer, to print something. I think that's the only reason. Somebody could put in the comments below if there's something more in depth, but that's my understanding. So often, and I think we've talked about over the last few weeks, there's a variations, but often, or more often than not, you do drawing in model space, and you do printing or the layout in the paper space or layout space. Because you're able to draw in model space, you can plot or print from model space if you so desire. So just as an example, this is a theatre, and we're going to zoom into this corner up here, which is a back of house space that somebody needs a print of. So if you desire, you're very welcome to print. The reason why you might choose not to print in this location is I'm going to print this drawing. I'm going to send it to Dick to comment on, and Dick's going to comment on a few things. And I would like to have a follow-up conversation with him to send his comments back. But what if I print it in model space? I can't necessarily do an exact replication of what I've sent him in the first place, and therefore, to make it presentable to him, ideally I'll do a layout in paper space. But nonetheless, like as in any program, Control P to print or plot. In AutoCAD for the last maybe 3 to 5 years, I don't know if Don would disagree or not, but something like 3 to 5 years, there's been a really good a plotter, which is DWG to PDF. This is a totally free for if you purchase the program. Before that, or other people might have used Qt PDF Plot, which is a complementary program, or if you own the Adobe Creative Cloud software, you might have Adobe PDF included in this list here. But I'm going to use DWG to PDF because I don't have a printer connected to my computer at this stage. I would like to choose an A4 piece of paper because I feel that would be appropriate for it to be printed when it gets to someone's office. And what the next question is, would I like to print the display, and the display is everything I can see in my model space currently, or would I like to print a section of it? So in this circumstance, I'd like to print a section. So I'm going to choose a window. This dialog box is going to disappear, and I'm going to do a rectangle around the area I desire to print. So now I have DWG to PDF, A4 piece of paper, a window selection area. I'd like to center the plot to the page. But you can see my representation of 210 millimeters, which is the width of an A4 piece of paper, by 297 millimeters is the wrong way around. So all I need to do, like in any other program, portrait or landscape, it makes it fit a bit better. Currently, it's fit to page, which is not necessarily appropriate. It needs to be a scale that Dick can print out and understand when it's at his office. So it's 1:25. You can see, because I did a smaller scale than it's available, it's got a red box around the whole thing. So what I need to do is do a 1:50 scale. And now the red box has disappeared. The piece of paper is still represented, but the rectangle in the center, which is highlighted with a hat, is what my drawing is going to be. I'm going to click OK. Where would I like to save it? I'd like to save it on the desktop, and I'd like to save it as plot 1, save it there. A dialog box disappears. Up in front of me pops the PDF has been saved. So this is now ready to send to Dick to comment on. And you can see it's absolutely perfect. It's a normal page, but what I can't do is I can't replicate that process a second time. So in 3 or 4 days' time, when he comes back to me and he's got comments about the sink is in the wrong place or the entrance is actually going to have a double door on here, I'm not able to replicate this drawing exactly. So that's where I would choose to, rather than print it in paper space, in model space, sorry, I'll print it in paper space. In this circumstance, I have got 5 layouts available to me. I'm not going to use those 5 layouts straight away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a temporary layout, and I'm going to do right-click on Stools Plan brackets 1. I'm going to do move or copy. I'm going to select the first one. I'm going to do a create copy, and I'm going to click on move to end. So it's going to be stool plan, and I'm actually going to just call it an A3 piece of paper, and I am going to do number 6. So in this circumstance, if I zoom into my title block here, I have some information here which has got a grey background, and the grey background is automatically filled out. So there's a Lisp or a Diesel expression which is a type of script which is written to produce this grey background is automated. So a grey background of this is taken from the file name. A grey background of this is taken from the computer's date. This here is taken from the file name, and this here is taken from the file name as well. You can see the 0.6, that's taken from this layout tab down here. So if I do 8 and press enter, I can do refresh, and it's gone to 8. But just the only reason I mention that is just in case I glance over it later in the process and I might not necessarily focus on much detail. So Z enter, E enter to zoom extents. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to erase everything in this piece of paper. And I am also going to erase this. And what I need to tell Dick, I apologize, is this room. So what I have here is I've done new viewport to produce a viewport into our model space. That's a rectangle. You can do it as a polyline, you can do it as a circle, but in this circumstance, I've just done a rectangle. I'm going to double click inside it to make it active. I'm going to zoom around with my middle wheel, zoom to make it a different scale. I'm going to go to the scale at the bottom right-hand corner, and I'm going to do a scale of 1 to 25. I am quite happy with that. I'm going to lock it. I'm going to double click outside it, and I'm going to make there we go. I'm going to make the viewport bigger. So what we have now is very, very similar to what we have in the model space, but what is, in my opinion, slightly better is that I can replicate this multiple times. So if there's 3 or 4 revisions that we go through changing the layout space of this back of house space, I can replicate it multiple times. And for example, you might desire to compare 2 or 3 PDFs on top of each other, or 2 or 3 DWGs, and therefore it's just easy to understand it. It's a fixed scale. And again, so I double click inside it. It's a 1 to 25 scale. I'm happy with that. I change the scale bar down here to 1 to 25, and I change the scale on here to 1 to 25, which is fantastic. And what I can do now is can do Control P, exactly the same. DWD to PDF is an A3 piece of paper. It's the whole layout, so I'm not choosing any area. It's automatically chosen for me. It's chosen 420 millimeters by 297, which is an A3 piece of paper. I click OK. And I click on desktop, and I'm going to call this plot 2. No, if I spell it correct, I'm going to call it plot 2. So there, it's going to print out. So if I bring up plot 1, it's identical, but there's a few teeny changes. So on the left, no, I apologize. Where am I going to get this from? On the right-hand side is an A3 piece of paper, and on the left-hand side is a A4 piece of paper, but nonetheless, it tells you the same story. But what's beneficial about the right-hand side is I can replicate it multiple times, and you could just flick through you could bind a PDF together of the different revisions just to understand the story that you're trying to tell.
So, Tom,
yes, of course.
Where you altered the scale that you've got in the bottom left-hand corner, just show us that series of command again?
Yeah. So what this is, Dick, is it's a annotative block, and the annotative nature of it, or the annotation of it, is visibility states. So what this is a scale bar that I've come up with over time, and many people have helped me. So thank you to everyone who's helped me. But nonetheless, it's something that I use because there's loads of different ways of doing it. But this is one way I felt that was most beneficial, is that I can quickly do a different scale. And I can click on this down arrow and select any of these scales here. And essentially, you're just changing the visibility state of this block to a different block. So you could change it to 1 to 100. So what I'll try my best to do is, if I go to block editor, it's going to bring up a different page, and you can see visibility state is shown here.
Yeah.
And up here, there's a visibility box that's popped up in the block editor ribbon, and the visibility states are I can't count that, but maybe 20 different visibility states. But if I were to click on it, that physical visibility state here, this 1-to-1 scale, is a block called scale 0001. And if I go to visibility state 1 to 10, there's another block which is visibility, or a block name of 0010. And so all it is, it's a block. And I think last week we might have gone through the parameters of stretching or pulling a rectangle to a different size. And no, that was 2 weeks ago, wasn't it? We were changing the height of a steel deck, and we were changing it from 150 millimeters to 200 to 250. And that was one parameter you could set. But this parameter I've set is visibility, and the visibility that we have is multiple blocks with a different scale bar to it.
Tom, do you think you also just quickly talk about, you've got AutoCAD for Windows open, which I think most people are using, about setting up the page in a layout? So when you went to plot, you had the right paper size and everything.
Yeah. So what we have here is, I've cheated. Before the lesson started, I set up an A3 layout. And so when I say a layout, so the A3 piece of paper of this is the white area. The grey area is a non-area. I could, in theory, if I so desired, copy this over here and print the PDF. It will still only print the white area. It won't print this on the right-hand side. So I sent this off to Dick and Dom, and they said, oh, hang on a minute, I need it on a different size piece of paper. So that's fine. So in this circumstance, they desire to print it on a plotter, and they desire to print it in A1 size. So what I do now is, my tab down here, which is called A3 in brackets 9, is the layout we're seeing on an A3 piece of paper. I'm going to right click on there, and I'm going to do Page Setup Manager. I'm going to edit this A3 in brackets 9 by clicking Modify. What it is, this dialog box we see here is very, very similar to what we saw in Model Space. What it is, it chooses the DWG to PDF plotter, or you could print any plotter or printer you have in your office. It selects A3 piece of paper. It selects the layout, so the whole layout. It's the fact it's a 1-to-1 scale, so there's no scale difference in its landscape. But what Dick and Dom desire is an A1 piece of paper. So we can do here, we can click an A1 piece of paper, and everything else should stay the same. So the layout is the same. The fact that it's printing the layout's the same, the 1-to-1 scale's the same, and the landscape's the same. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to click Close. I'm going to do Zoom Extents, and nothing changes. And you're like, oh dear, what's happened there? So when you do Zoom Extents, you'll only Zoom Extents to a object that's on the page. So the object on the page is currently an A3 template to print. But if I zoom out, you'll see that the white piece of paper is much, much larger. And in this circumstance, it's 4 times as big, because an A1 piece of paper can fit a 3 piece of paper on it. So in this circumstance, I have made a stretch command on this template, and it stretches to A2 width, A1 width. And I'm going to stretch to the left-hand side to A2 length and A1 length. So now with a move command, M for move, I'm going to move this to the bottom right to this bottom right here. I'm going to do Z enter, E enter for zoom extent. And what we now have is an A1 piece of paper, but the viewport and the scale bar that we were talking about just now is still in the location of an A3 piece of paper. So because Dick and Dom have asked for this drawing to be printed bigger, almost definitely the desire for the scale to be bigger. So what we can do is we're going to stretch the viewport without changing the scale at this stage, and we're going to move the scale ruler to the left-hand side as well. We're going to double-click inside here. We're going to unlock it with a padlock on the toolbar at the bottom. We're going to move this around, and it was 1:25 scale. It's a total guess, 1:10. Would that work? That's not too bad, so that's quite a nice scale. I'm going to lock it there. I'm going to double-click outside. The scale bar can be changed to 1:10, visibility state, and on the title block, I can change it to 1:10. So Z enters, E enters to make sure I'm happy, Control P to print this, DWG to PDF, and A1 piece of paper, and everything else is as we set up in the right-clicking on the tab at the bottom. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to save it on the desktop as plot 3. So it's going to think about it. And so as a comparison, I am going to bring up plot 2. When this opens, is plot 2 going to open? It doesn't. There we go. It does want to open now. So on the left-hand side is plot 2, and on the right-hand side is plot 3. So on the left-hand side is an A3 piece of paper with a scale of 1:25. On the right-hand side is an A1 piece of paper with a scale of 1:10. Without actually looking into the detail of the PDF, it's hard to know, but we know because we set it up ourselves, and at a glance you can tell that the piece of paper is 2 different sizes. You might not necessarily know this is A1 in comparison to A3, but you could tell they're quite significantly different sizes because the title block, which is printed the same size, whereas A3 piece of paper or A1, when it's printed in real life, is visually different sizes. And so therefore, if I go to 100% scale in here, and I see the title block there, and on the A3 piece of paper, I do 100%, you can see the title blocks are the same size.
Brilliantly described, Tom.
Fantastic. So can I just describe one other thing, Dom, before you tell me that there's potentially other ways of doing this or publishing in AutoCAD? So we talked about. Let's go back to model space. Z enter, E enter. So we have a ground plan of a theatre with a section. We finish the drawing and we desire to send this to the client. In theory, as we discussed, we could print it in the model space. Because there's absolutely no reason not to as a one-off, but it would be more presentable if we sent it to the client as an A3 piece of paper. So in this circumstance, I have 4 plans and 1 section of this specific theatre. And what I feel is that I feel I should send a DWG as well as a PDF to the client. The reason that is sometimes beneficial to do that is that you're trying your best to describe it with drawing. You're trying your best to describe a story. This story needs to be understood by anyone. And when I say that, it could be somebody who has a word processor on their computer only, or somebody who has the full-blown AutoCAD on their computer. We feel that it would be beneficial for both of those clients or parties to be able to gain the same information from the drawing. Maybe not in a massive detail, but nonetheless, at a glance, both those users should be able to gain the same information. So they should be able to say, oh, hang on, the user who opens a PDF should be able to say there's 1,700 seats. The user who opens the DWG could break down and say, that's entirely correct, but if you remove 100 seats in the front, you have this number of seats. So, but nonetheless, you just desire to tell a story. And the story we desire to tell is told over 5 pages. You can, as we talked about, do Control P to print this PDF, and you could print it 5 times. So you could, in the first one, print it page 1, page 2, etc., which is a very, very sensible way of doing it. A feature that's been in AutoCAD for maybe 3 or 4 years, which again Dom might be able to tell more specifically, but roughly 3 or 4 years, there's been a feature that will plot a DWG to a PDF at a certain state within your process. So those states within the process is when you save your drawing, you might desire to do a PDF. When you close the drawing, you might desire to do a PDF, and there's a couple of other circumstances. So the way to get to this, either in model space or paper space, is do right-click Options, This is where AutoCAD's quite powerful, because an awful lot of the information that you see, or the tools within AutoCAD that you use, can be changed. So this is a circumstance where it's not set up as default, but if you do desire to set it up, you can change it to your heart's content. You go to plot and publish. At the bottom here, there's something called auto publish. Earlier in the process, we were talking about the words to actually produce a PDF or a paper. It might be plot, it might be print, or it might be publish. Essentially, they do very, very similar things. But if you try and find something and the one word you can't find print, you could look for publish or plot. We're going to tick yes to it, and we're going to do the automatic publish settings. In this circumstance, I set it up so when I edit a drawing, whether it's doing a new line or doing new text, and I close it, it will ask me, would I like to save the drawing? If I say yes, there'll be a second question. And the second question is, would I like to publish the drawing? And the publish is the items you've set up here. So I'd like to, it'll be prompt on the close. I'd like to save it in the same drawing location as the DWG. I'd like to include the layouts only, so therefore excluding the model. I'd like to save it as a PDF. I'd like to save it as a multi-sheet file rather than a single PDF. I'd like to save it as a combined, so therefore there could be 2 sheets or there could be 10 sheets. I don't want to include the layer information, and I do want to merge the overwritten layers. I think there's, and then this information is obsolete for PDF export. I click OK, I click Apply, and I click OK. So I have made my changes. I'm happy with this. I'm going to send it over to Dick for approval. So I would like to close the drawing. Would I like to save it? Yes, I would. Would I like to publish it? Yes, I would. So all it's doing now is it's publishing those 5 pages as one PDF. I'm going to minimize AutoCAD, and I'm going to go to the area, the location I've saved this drawing. So in this area, this location, I've saved this drawing, and it's a PDF. I just make it the full screen. And so what this is 5 pages of A3 PDFs. So up here, you'll see page 1 of 5. And I just scroll down. So the first page, second, third, fourth, and fifth, etc. What you can also do is, if I go back to the same drawing, I can do the same process automatically, but save 5 separate pages. So if I go to Options, I go to Automatic Publish Settings, I do a single sheet file, I click OK, I click Apply, and I click OK again, Zoom Extents. I say, would I like to save it? Yes. Or would I like to publish it? Yes. And hopefully in the same location of the DWG file, there should be 5 PDFs, which is not so easy to tell a story to a client, but might be appropriate for this circumstance. So therefore, I've got page number 1, which is here, and page number 1 in this circumstance is the only thing I desire to send to the client. So there's multiple ways of doing it, but that's quite a useful tool within AutoCAD, and hopefully that's a useful process we've gone through.
Absolutely brilliant, Tom. It describes publish very, very, very well. And I think what I'll do is I'll start sharing in a second and show you in Vectorworks, and I'll just pop it up into Mac CAD as well. Publish, what Tom described, is a very safe way of looking after your drawings and your PDFs, because every time you shut your drawing, a new PDF is put on the Dropbox or the server or wherever. So the client is always sure they're looking at the latest information. And going back to what Tom said, telling the stories we tell aren't just generally between CAD types. They kind of go out to rigging and lighting and sound, but more importantly to logistics, to hotels, to venues, sometimes directly. And not everyone understands a plan like we do generally in drawing. So sending that story out in a single PDF that allows everyone to see the story and not lose any parts as well. That's always my fear of single PDFs, that they click on the first two, go, yeah, I got that, and miss PDF number 4 that had some really vital information in it. Where it's one PDF, they scroll down, it's all there. So hopefully you are seeing my screen now of a theatre we all know already, actually. So this is a theatre I made for Lefts, and I did some publishing before. And you can see on the right-hand side of my screen, I've got a set of layouts already. So these are the equivalent to the tabs at the bottom of the screen in AutoCAD. So very much like Tom had, it's a layout. This one has a plan in it. Next one's going to have the section elevation. It actually needs updating, so I just open the program up. So I've got a load of stuff in one sheet. They're going to take ages to update this just to annoy me. What we can then do is take all those sheets and we can say we would like to publish it. And if it's ever updates, come on, computer. Sorry, I asked you to think about this really, really hard. There we go. We can do publish. Unlike AutoCAD, Vectorworks is not command line driven, so it's file and then down to publish. And when we hit publish, we get a very similar kind of scenario to what Tom has in publish. I'll go to AutoCAD Mac to show this screen in Mac version. It's also pretty much exactly the same in Windows version. So what this screen has done is showing all the items within this drawing, and Vectorworks pulls up my layouts, so the cover page, the plan, section lines. And it also shows me some of my saved views. What we're actually interested in publishing here is the layouts we've done. So we've got cover, plan, section, blah. We can move these. I can slide these up and down. So this will be the order that the PDF is published in, the pages will appear. But what we can also do, if I come and close out here, this week the client asked for a lectern, so I drew a lectern, and we want to include this into the pack, showing the lectern and what it looks like to the client, and it can also go out to the carpentry or set builders, and they can start costing on it. So within that, I did a straight layout of it. So there's a little basic drawing of our lectern, so it can go for costing and approval. What I tend to do on my sheets is also put a cover page on it. And so when the client receives it, they've got something, they know what they're looking at, and it saves when you've got hundreds and hundreds of drawings, you can quickly find what it's called, what's inside it, and you're not having to look in the wrong drawings too much. But going back to the theatre, we would like to publish this theatre, but we'd also like to add the lectern into it. So you can, and this also happens in AutoCAD, I can select a folder of more stuff. And I believe it's the find the lectern, HBM Theatre. Where did I save the lectern? I'm going to heart my own petard at the moment. Find where I put the lectern. HBM Theatre, is it in there? I can't remember where I saved the lectern. Standby callers.
It's a very good lesson. A very good lesson, Dominic, in workflows, and it's one of the things that as I've been going through, realizing that my brain is just not organized enough. And what you're going through, I feel your pain.
So actually it's in Left's Learning. So it's sitting in Left's Learning. I saved something called a lectern in here somewhere. Apparently, Left's Learning, lectern. So what it's actually asking us to do is to choose a folder. So this is the folder I want to choose. I click open, it's going to drag. Slightly annoyingly and not as neat as AutoCAD, I have to say, all the drawings within that folder. So how you keep your hierarchy of folders does CAD. But here we got is Left's Learning. Let's see if we can find the lectern just on its own without the backup. It says Dom making a total mess of this. Theatre, lectern. Here's the lectern, 3D backup. So let's go sheet layer, lectern, and add it. So what this is now showing is we've got the the layouts from the drawing I was working, which is the theatre, and we're going to add the lectern into it. And even though I've chosen it from the backup, because I can't see the main lectern drawing, hopefully it's going to take it and bring it in. And we're going to go publish. And there's a couple of things I should go around the top before we go publish. You can save a set of drawings. So you can say, if you're going back to the same drawing and publishing the same things again and again and again, you can save this as a set of drawings. And you could say, I could call this Left's Theatre, and it's exactly the same in AutoCAD as well. You can save the published lists, saves you having to recreate lists and redo the orders. So this is now known as Left's Theatre. You can manage the set, you can come into here and you can edit it if you wanted to. We brought it in, we brought the items into PDFs, and now we're going to say, what do we want to do? Storage and processing. We're going to store and process this locally. We could do, if it's a very big drawing, we could ask the Vectorworks Cloud, which is the service you get with Vectorworks, to do the processing, use their computers to do it. Or we could ask the cloud to do it and then put it into a Dropbox for us. On this occasion, we're going to do it here. And this will take a little bit of time. I'm going to hit publish. And then what I'm going to do is, it's called Left Theatre 03. I'll just call it 3.1. just so it doesn't overwrite. And hopefully, he says, if you can bring a drawing in, here's what some published drawings look like. So while Vectorworks chunters away, I will show you one I prepared earlier in Best Blue Peter style. So these are my layouts. It's the left theatre. We've got a nice title page to show the client. And then we go through, and I showed this part of this the other week. Here's a plan. Here's a section through the centre line, front on section, some pretty pictures of what it's going to look like from camera point of view. And at the end, it's added the lectern to it. So this is now traveling with that PDF safely and well. And it's all good. And it's going back to this one. This is how the publish would look for just the lectern on its own. So you've got a title page, and then you've got the detail of it as well. And like Tom, my sheets aren't as automated as Tom. Vectorworks has some pretty good automation. All this stuff fills in down here. It's taken from the drawing. So what it is, where it is, revisions, scales and stuff like that. So that's the Vectorworks side of it. Me rambling around, not being quiet. Does that make sense to you guys? I know you're not Vectorworks users. Let's come back over to AutoCAD. I'm going to get rid of this annoying Google thing. Let's just see my screen. Doesn't want to go.
No, I think it's really good. Yeah, totally made sense.
Let's get rid of that. Cool, brilliant. So jumping back to AutoCAD. So exactly the same process, and this links exactly to what Tom was doing and through Vectorworks. Back to command line, which we love. So this drawing is a model space. It's actually a hangar at Goodwood, which we drew for Festival of Speed last year. And they put, if you went to Festival of Speed, it's where the Italian job show was. Exactly the same. There's a production company name, Collaborate. And then we've got some layouts. And actually the layouts in here are all the, click away, Dom, are all the same. Come on. So we've got an A3, some A3 the detail. I've got an A0 waiting there, which for them to plot, and an A1. So going back here, we can come in here and go, here's a drawing. We want to send it out to the client, and we want to publish a few sheets together. So it's exactly that. Command line, publish. And this is accessing all the information, what Tom talked about earlier. And actually, this is really important to mention at this point. The publish command will pull the details from what you have set up in the pages at the bottom in the tabs. So it will only do what you have put here. So if you publish, you get a really spurious, why the hell did that happen? It's because it's gone to look here for what you want to do with it. So as you set up your template file, we've all talked about getting the printing information in the bottom of the layout right is really crucial to your speed of your workflow. So here, very much like Tom, it's DWG to PDF3, and I think you're correct, it's been here for 3 years. And it's much better than having a non-AutoCAD PDF publisher. QPDF was great, but it did have its problems. So you get it here, so to PDF. Can't remember, do different, yeah, it does different qualities as well. You can choose different qualities, what you're doing, but straight PDF is fine. Paper size, scales, as Tom talked about. So having that set up correctly is really, really good.
So all that's set up with your as part of your template.
Yes. So going back, with you going back weeks and weeks and weeks, and we talked about setting up your template drawing, having your layers set up, and having your text styles and your dim styles all set up in your drawing. Another part of that process is setting up your layouts. And as Tom has shown so beautifully, that he has different layouts, and his template is actually very, very, best I've seen, actually editable and stretchable and do whatever you want. But having that correctly done means you don't have to think about it, and you can get that drawing out the door very, very quickly. If somebody sent you, as Tom showed last week, a PDF of a venue, and you just want to get it in, get some lines out, click on the layout at the bottom, put the viewport in the right place and hit publish. Being able to hit publish without having to come and edit stuff is pretty crucial. So we've got those set up. You're happy with your layouts because it's your template file. Publish is the command. And it's slightly different between Mac and Windows, but it's exactly the same. You can add in Mac, you can add the current drawing, you could add all open drawings. So add the current drawings, and what it does, it brings in pretty much what we saw with Tom. It brings in the model space, and then it brings in all the layouts. So you can see what's going on. If I try and drag this out so you can actually see properly. So yeah, again, as Tom did, labeling your layouts correctly helps at this point in time. You can see what you want. We don't need to send the model space to PDF, so we'll click the minus button. We have a title page, yes, please. The client wants to see that because they're presenting it to their clients. We have the basic layout, and we have some dims. And I know that actually the last two are just showing the viewport because the viewport's sitting there and it's looking through. So we want 3 pages to publish. You can come down here and you can choose where you want to publish, either recent places or click and send it to a file. So we'll go up to less learning. We'll stick it in where are we? Less learning, history and theatre. Oops. Hold on. Clickety click, and we'll stick it in PDFs. We'll go there. Thank you very much. We're happy with everything else, with the resolutions, and we'll click publish. And it's going to ask me for a file name, so we'll go good word. For some reason, it hasn't picked up the less learning, so just go back to less learning. Good word 01. Hit save, and now it's doing the publish process. It likes to be clever and open up the PDF afterwards. It's telling me it's finished the plot job, and so we have just got our 3 pages in one place, ready to go to the client. They're not going to miss anything, and it's all good. Vectorworks in the background has been doing its publishing as well. So this is the latest one. And that's why it's bouncing up and down at the bottom, asking to be congratulated that it actually did something and has finished publishing for me. What else to tell you? So like Vectorworks, we come back into publish. We can add the current drawing, and you can then add, if you had other drawings open, it would then drag those in. So exactly like I did in Vectorworks, say we're in the theatre, and I want to do a general floor planning layout and send that, and I want to do the rigging, overseeing drawing and the carpet plans, but they're actually sitting in 3 separate CAD files. I can open up those 3 CAD files, and then I can pull them in the layouts I want, and then hit publish, choose a title page off one of them, and we're all good to go. Does that help everybody?
Yeah, perfect.
I think so. I mean, I think from the outside, so much of this is getting the ideas into your head and then going back and offline of trying it and practicing it. And you know, that's where I keep coming back to.
I think, unlike Tom, I use the multi-publish I publish generally all the time. I don't publish on closure because a lot of time I'm sitting on servers where other people are. And if every time I'm closing a drawing, which may be 2 or 3 times a day, as I'm jumping around drawings, it's sticking a new PDF in. I wouldn't be very, very popular, or I'd spend my life going to tidy it up. But the publish and bringing in other drawings or other bits of information from other drawings, I find very, very useful. And then being able to edit the title page, send it to a client, and they've got everything in one go as the story we keep talking about, and giving the information works well. Moving on, I think time's rocking by. I think we're going to do another record session, but it's all good. Dick, one of your questions to Tom and I this week was about UCSs and world UCSs. I think Tom's going to try and not geek out on UCSs, and we're going to ask the questions to slow him up.
Well, I'm very happy, but please, can the questions be relatively simple? Okay, yes. So I'm going to present my screen now, and while Dom has been doing that fantastic session, I have drawn a lamp, or I put a drawing together of a lamp. So what this is I've gone back to my friendly A3 piece of paper. I have a lamp that's been set out. It's a 3D lamp, and the reason I know it's 3D because I use the view base command to produce this layout and not the viewport command. That's all I'm going to do in layout. All this is just emphasizing is what I'm going to do in model space. It doesn't affect what is on paper space in any way. So I'm going to go to model space, and temporarily I'm going to move this lamp 500 millimeters to the right. Whenever you open a drawing, you might well see in this dark background, which can be changed, and just a quick way of changing it, right click options, and you click on display and colors, and in there you can change the colors. So often it's a dark gray, or it's a black. Some people have it as white, and if that is the case, you'll see this as a contrasting color, so it might be black. So this item, which has got the Y going north-south and X going left to right, is the UCS. It's the zero location of our drawing. Often when you're doing a drawing, you don't actually need to know it. But for example, if I use the rectangle command, I draw it over here, the computer understands the size of this rectangle, but also, interestingly, the distance from this rectangle to the zero of the drawing. Often there's no need for you to know that, but the coordinate systems is all based around that. So, for example, if I put a point, by clicking point, I'm going to put a point here. So this point here, I'm going to click on it once. And on the right-hand side in my properties tab, or window, sorry, at the bottom, there's a geometry. And we have the geometry position of X, Y, and Z. So Z is, in this circumstance, is an easy one to talk about. So Z is towards me or away from me. So in this circumstance, because I'm looking in 2D, it doesn't actually matter, but it could be the height of a chair, or it could be like the height of a steel deck, as we discussed the other day. But what we do know, and we can visually see, is the X position, which is in this circumstance left to right, is 8 millimeters or 7.9 millimeters. And the Y, which in this circumstance is north-south, is 271 millimeters. And in here, if we choose to, because it's based on coordinate system, we can choose to override the position of that point by entering data in here. So 55 millimeters and 46 millimeters in relation to the UCS, or the what's it stand for, Dom? User coordinate
Universal
system.
coordinate system. Yeah. Universal coordinate system and coordinate system.
Yeah, so UCS, let's call it UCS. So I have moved this point in relation to 0, 0 of the drawing. I can also, because in this circumstance, I have a plus measurement, because there's nothing before the number. If I use the move command and move it below, we are going to have a minus measurement. So that's no problem whatsoever. It doesn't matter how far. Actually, there probably is a limit. Dom, do you know, is there a limit to the distance you can be away from the 0, 0 of a drawing? There probably is. It's probably kilometers and kilometers.
I'm afraid I don't know. Kilometers, yeah. All I can tell you is Vectorworks. In Vectorworks, the further you're away from the UCS, the more computing. It's always computing back to the UCS, yeah, or the origin, as it's called in Vectorworks. So the further away, yeah, you get, the more it does. Of a silly story I read about while we talked last week, we were talking about this. In Switzerland, they coordinate all construction from a single point somewhere in Switzerland. So you have the UCS of the drawing, and then you have a local origin where your actual site is, which sounds absolutely crazy, but I can understand the principles of it.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Sorry. You mentioned that. No, it's fascinating you mentioned that, because, again, please interrupt if you have a different opinion, Dom, but I believe that's a similar circumstance where when you purchase ordnance survey maps, when you purchase the DXF file of an ordnance survey map, when you use the XREF or external reference command to put it in AutoCAD, the location of that will be at a glance, it looks like a random distance from the 0, 0 of a drawing. But that 0, 0, I believe, is somewhere in the United Kingdom. So therefore, if I was to purchase the city centre of Leeds and the city centre of Glasgow, and you would XREF them together, I think, I could be proven wrong, but I think that when you XREF them together, there would be visually the appropriate distance and the orientation away from one another.
That would make sense. I've never checked it.
Yeah, because I think, when you purchase London Ordnance Survey maps, you can purchase the West End and then North London, and you don't necessarily need to purchase the bit between. I think so, rather than totally sure. But okay, so the UCS is the 0, 0 of a drawing. You don't need to draw in relation to it. but if you choose to, you're welcome to. I'm going to raise this, I'm going to raise this. In this circumstance, now we've talked about the X, Y, and Z. This block here, which is called lamp 1, is 500 millimeters away from where it's meant to be. I'm going to click 0, and it's going to go to its original location. I'm going to do shift middle wheel to pull this around, and you'll see here, when I have shift middle wheel selected, I'm still moving around. Do you see that Z is the vertical, which is blue? X is towards my right-hand side of my keyboard, and it's red, and Y is to the right-hand side of my screen, and it's green. So that is the UCS. The UCS, oddly, can be picked up. So if you click on it, AutoCAD for the last, again, 2 or 3 years-ish, roughly, or 3 or 4 potentially, you're able to manipulate the UCS by clicking on it. This, if you have been using maybe a 2010 version, I don't think this would work, and I don't know if, Dom, if you agree.
I can't
no, so you can pick this up and move it, which to a certain extent sends shivers down my spine, but you're able to do it. So what you're doing essentially, I'm going to click escape. What you're doing essentially is editing the center of the drawing temporarily, but you're able to save the drawing, and I'm able to save it and send this to Dom, and Dom could open it. And at a glance, it seems like my lamp is not on 0, 0 of the drawing, because the UCS is not in its original location. So I don't know if you remember, a few moments ago, I was in plan view, in the top view. My lamp was 500 millimeters away from my UCS, and I was all happy. But now I've moved my UCS, and the properties is indicating the fact that my lamp is not on the center of the drawing, which you're like, oh, why did I not do that? I need to change that again. Let's quickly change it. There we go. I'm happy, and I'm going to send this over to Dom. I'm going to go to the model space, and oh my gosh, what happened there? So this is telling us something has changed, and we're not entirely sure what. I'm going to go back to the model space, and what we have changed the location of the UCS. And Dom, what is the right terminology? So there's world UCS and user UCS. This is where the terminology...
There's a world coordinate system of the world, which is the drawing one, and then the user one, which you can then name for different reasons you might want to move the UCS. And a bit like you, I find being able to drag the UCS, and it happens both in AutoCAD and Vectorworks, highly dangerous, because you can get into a lot of trouble very, very quickly with it.
But at the same time, incredibly useful is the fact that it's not entirely obvious that you need to reset it. So
why is it useful?
Why is it useful is because I can drag it here. Oh, sorry. I'm going to drag it here, and I'm going to rotate this to this angle, and I'm going to do a rectangle from 0, 0, enter, and I'm going to do a rectangle there. I'm going to extrude it, and I know that it's an angle there, and I'm going to pick it up again, and I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to pull this, that didn't work, did it? I'm going to put that there. I'm going to drag this around like this. I'm going to do another rectangle from 0, 0, and it's set like that. So this is, sorry, it's a bit of a not very useful example, but that's why it's useful.
It was described to me. Yeah, it's described to me if you were working, say, on an architectural plan or something like that, and you've been sent an exhibition stand, let's say, and it's in real space in the venue. And when you look at, say, Excel, it's normally nice horizontal Excel in front of you, but the stand is on 45 degrees, and you need to go and put in a load of downlighters into the plan. You can turn the UCS by 45 degrees, and then it will move, and all your movement will move at 45 degrees, and you can very easily drop stuff in without having to measure back and forth all the time. Same with roof rafters or something like that. You're working on somebody else's plan that's set to an angle. Now you can spin the whole drawing if you wanted to, but or you can change the UCS, and then everything works off that plane. So
yeah,
sorry, Tom.
And I know that's all incredibly useful information. One thing that I feel at a glance, if I was to open this drawing, it wouldn't be totally obvious, but there'll be a few hints that something's happened to the UCS. And one of the biggest hints is the view cube, I believe it's called, in the top right-hand corner, has gone a bit weird. It's saying that, in my opinion, what should be top is left, and front, I suppose, is kind of right. But something has happened there, and I need to try and rectify it. In my opinion, one of the quickest ways of rectifying it is to go to the top left-hand corner of the drawing. And what is deemed by AutoCAD as a custom view, i.e. is anything other than top, bottom, front, back, I'm going to click on top. What this has done is taken I've gone from an isometric view or a side view to a plan view, to our original plan view. And the most important thing is moved the UCS back to the world coordinate system location. So where I have a very odd, in my opinion, layout here, I can think, oh, hang on a minute, I've got an opinion of how I could rectify that. So temporarily, I'm going to delete those two beautiful boxes. I'm going to also go and click my lamp, and I'm going to do 0, enter 0, and I'm going to go back to my layout, and therefore my layout's back to its original form.
So when you went back to world, that resets everything, resets the 000 origin back to where it should be?
That's correct. So I believe that the terminology, if you agree, Dom, is that is a user coordinate system, and I'm going to click on here, click on top, and that is a world coordinate system. So the world is always in the same location, but at a glance, it might not necessarily be the case. But the world is one fixed location. And is there a way of changing that, Dom? I don't know if there's you might be able to, but
no, I don't think.
No.
No, I don't think you can change the world. The other thing, I don't know, just very quickly checking, under the compass, under the wheel in the top right corner, I think if you click on the little grey bar below, I believe that they will then come up with what UCSs are available to the drawing. So you can click either world UCS or a named UCS. And I would say to anyone who is putting a different UCS in is to use the UCS command and just save it as Tom's whatever, just so people know, obviously, there is a different UCS in there and whose it belongs to. And then if you pick up the drawing separately, doing own work, you can click back into World UCS and off you go again. And it saves the user one separately.
So just show back to your Excel example, which I think is a really good one because it does happen often. The spinning a drawing through 45 degrees, was that shows that bit again?
Sorry, on my AutoCAD for the last 2 or 3 years, like we said, in theory, you could just copy it. Not copy it, move it, and then change it to your degrees. And the degrees are set down here. If I right click here, it's set at 22.5, 45, etc. degrees, and so therefore it's locking to. I know without doing too much guesswork, I know that's 40. Oh, that's 90 or 0, and then this is 45 degrees. And you'll see my cursor has changed. So therefore, if I do, I'm in 2D plan view. So I'm looking in plan view, which is why you can't see the letter Z, because the letter Z is towards me or away from me. And I can do a rectangle, and anything I draw is going to be starting on that 45 degree angle.
Gotcha.
Just a very brilliant thing about World UCS is that two drawings can have have World UCS, and ideally, when a project is in its early stages, one person would set the UCS. So, for example, Fira might be a known column in the building. If you're working in a theatre, it might be the upstage edge of the fire curtain. But that UCS never changes, and when you XREF new drawings in, they're always going to be in the same location at all times.
So when somebody, it does occasionally happen if somebody sends you through a DWG that is out because they've changed the UCS, hitting the world takes it back to where it is, so that my XREF, as it will match up again.
If that in a scenario that you were to open a drawing and you were to bring an XREF in, and you for some reason you think, oh gosh, that looks a bit different, I'd recommend detaching the XREF, doing this tool of going to top view or going to world UCS, and then XREFing in. I would detach the XREF entirely, change the UCS to what you think might be the world coordinate systems, and then re-bring in the XREF in and just to see if that would solve this situation.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And that's exactly the bit that kind of I wanted to try and tease out of you, because it's happened a couple of times and it is just so mind-bogglingly scary. Suddenly everything's different.
Yeah, and another good practice when totally related, a good practice when you if I had my theatre and Dom had done a lighting plan of it, and it would be hugely beneficial if Dom had maybe an X or a circle on the UCS just in case it changes. Because what you don't want to do when you so I've got my theatre plan open, I XREF in the lighting plan. I don't desire to move that XREF around because that would be a negative thing. I'd like to go back to Dom and say, excuse me, Dom, I think there might be a little bit of an issue. Please, could you move your lighting plan back to our agreed world coordinate systems? So when you XREF, when you bring an XREF into AutoCAD, try your best never to move that physical XREF around the drawing. Go back to the person who produced the drawing originally and ask them to adjust their drawing for future revisions.
Gotcha.
And to be fair, Dick, the Theora, I know our dear friend Carlo spent a long time setting up all the halls in the Theora to exactly do that. So once you start referencing drawings in, they all relate back to the same UCS and arrive in the right place. So where Hall 8 should be, where 4, 6, 5 should all be, and that took him quite a bit of time, but now it's done. It's very, very good. But on the project we all did last September, October, Googling Excel, something went wrong somewhere in all the UCSs there, and then we eventually agreed to use the handrail outside the east entrance by the lift as the point, because it was the one secure point we knew was good, and that turned into our reference point in UCS, and everyone, we put a target on it, and everyone could then double check that was the target that was working for them, and if it was out, you could go back to that point and use it. So, but hopefully, as Tom says, all this stuff gets set up right at the start by one person, the keeper of the CADs, and then you shouldn't have to move your XREFs. And if you find yourself having to move an XREF, it's perfectly polite to write back and say, look, I'm having to move an XREF, something's going wrong here. Can we all have a quick look at it?
And that's a fantastic example of Excel. It can be any point. It doesn't have to be super fancy. It could be, as long as everyone agrees on it, it could be a drain cover, or it could be anything, a door hinge or something.
But it is one of those things that going through this series of tutorials, when the further in we get, the more I'm finding that, at the moment I'm back on going through week 2 and kind of revisiting it in knowing what I know now. It's just a fascinating process.
Have we? Yeah,
something's crashed somewhere. So I think we might just say our goodbyes, just in case it's streaming still. And I'll stream and say thank you to everybody. And hope I'm not crashing a conversation. And look after yourselves, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye all.